So we are going to start the last roundtable that we have. As you know, it's composed of the regional authorities, which are specific, and we've got representatives of the Navarre region, Portugal, the Basque country, Nouvelle, Aquitaine, and Galicia, who are all competent. I'm going to leave the floor to the moderator, Inés. Inés. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for the assistance to organize this last hour of the day. I'm going to present the people who are sitting around me at the round table for the strategy, European strategy in the south. On my right, I've got Antonio Sabarot. Sorry if I don't pronounce it right. Regional Council for the President of Regional Council of Aquitaine region. On my left, Bittor Oroz Izagirre, Vice Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food Policies, Durability and Sustainability in the government of the Basque country. Then Célia Ramos, who's the head of the Regional Commission of the North of Portugal. Then Pablo Muñoz, who's the General Manager of Medio Ambiente. And I apologize for the councillor who could not be with us today. And finally, on my right, I have Mr. José González Vázquez for rural environment in the Galicia region. Thank you very much for being here. Let me introduce myself. I'm here as a coordinator of the platform called Juntos por los Bosques, Together for the Forest. I'm going to take 5 minutes for the explanation of this platform, because I believe that this very platform is very close to what we actually reported earlier on. So Together for the Forest is a platform that was set up in 2016. It's not a political entity. It's based on volunteering, and it's a group of engineers in Madrid, Eduardo Roques, and they've tried to group all the various entities that are directly related to the forest sector. But what is forestry? What is that particular sector? We had to define it, so what entities should be contacted. So today we have more than 100 members and associates. Juntos por los Bosques, we cover the certification system of the companies for first and third processing for the people who deal with pulp production, the companies for forestry services, research centers, universities, and private people. We've had quite a lot of feedback, and the owners, private and public owners, provided their feedback also. And I guess it'd be more interesting to see who is not in Together for the Forest, Juntos por los Bosques. Well, I'm thinking about the ecological groups, the forestry agents also, and also the hunting sector. And we'll explain why they're not here, why they're not with us. I could say it later in private, but it's interesting to know, to find out why those three entities are not included in Juntos por los Bosques, Together for the Woods. So the idea in this project was to try to achieve consensus and to have a single voice heard, because the sector has many connections and links. And usually we're quite small, and we're very few. And the idea was to develop a common approach that we could have approved together. And we were trying to report this to the political representatives, to tell them that the words are important. It's very important. There's a huge potential there for the future. We have a huge potential for the future, and we want to participate and collaborate for the forestry policies in Spain. We've had very few achievements, to be honest, but we keep going. We're not very well known, and maybe some people think that we haven't achieved great things so far, but we got the message across where we wanted. And now we start talking about the economy, the importance of management. The more you drum it in, I think that gradually this concept will become sort of familiar. And this was not the case some years ago. And I think we did contribute greatly, and we had great moments when we celebrated the World Day of Forests. So we celebrated it in a small village, Guanafar, and we also published a document. And all the partners met with Greenpeace, and that was a major achievement. We've been trying to work with them on some specific topics because we think that together we can reach agreements, and we keep going, little by little, step by step. And now I'm going to hand over to the head of the policies of the regional forest policies. I'm going to ask you a question. These are two questions, one question, but this could be just one question. So I paid attention to what you said during the day and what is related to the concerns and requests of forest owners, and also based on what we did, what you explained, what the representative of the European Commission explained. So the question is, to what extent do we to what extent are the measures in favor or against the policies of each region? And more specifically, thinking on how we could make the most of the biodiversity policies to meet the real requests of the people and the real request of the regional people. And I think that the best solution is to make sure is to let somebody, each person give their input individually, and then we'll take a minute for Q&A, if you agree with this. Okay. I will be the timekeeper.
So maybe we could start with our regional Mr. Delegate. Thank you. First off, I'd like to apologize for my absence this morning. And I want to apologize for not having been part of your very interesting discussion this morning. So welcome to the Aquitaine region. We need great wood to do great barrels to produce great wines. So this wood is very important in our region. So I listened to what has been said this afternoon, and I do share a lot of the different positions that have been discussed during the roundtable. I'm sometimes a little bit more cautious when it comes to the European policy, because I'm cautious when it comes to recommendations which very quickly can turn to regulations and obligations. So, The Nouvelle Aquitaine region is a new, somewhat new region, because 5 years ago we added to the Aquitaine region the Limousin, where you can find mountainous forests, as well as the Poitou-Charentes region, where we find less and fewer forests. And very often we are looking towards our Spanish friends with some sort of envy, because we are very much centralized in France. There were some years where decentralization made great stride, but we feel that things are going back to Paris, actually, during this mandate and the previous presidential mandate as well. However, we did try to work in close relation with national services. But I've been working on forestry for a year only, and before that I was working with waterways, water resources, where of course adaptation to climate change was very important, more or less the same issues as what we find for forests today. So the forest policy in our region rests very heavily on partnerships with different professions. So we try to work with the entire sector, first and second process industry. Our forests cover about the same area as the forests in the entire country of Austria. And in Nouvelle Aquitaine, it represents 10 billion of euros in turnover and 60,000 jobs. So this is a very important industry. It's the third most important economic industry, actually, in our region. So as I was saying, we do work quite closely with the profession syndicates, but also with a union which represents the private owners. In France, the state only manages forests that are alongside waterways, alongside the coast, along the coast. And in Round Table, I heard said again and again that it's important to provide more information to private owners. And this is, we have a body dedicated to that who is doing remarkable work. We had a representative earlier on today of that body, and we're supporting them. The forest services in the regional level represents about only, 20 people. So we don't have a lot of human resources. However, there are also industrial stakeholders. And then, so I go back on adapting to climate change at the end of my contribution. But last weekend, we organized a forum in order to try and attract young people, young professionals toward the wood industry. And I'm certain that that sector has a bad reputation due to, what we can hear everywhere today. It's criminal. We should not fell a tree. this is something that is said again and again today. So it's having an adverse effect on the attractivity of the profession. And this is something that we want to work on. Then adaptation to climate change. Of course, this is important for the entire sector. The main activity regards maritime pine in our region, but then from the Limousin part of the region we have some mountainous trees and also poplars. We've decided to stop using plastics in conditioning, and this has boosted the poplar industry. We're still at the beginning of our union, so to speak, so there is still, you know, an Aquitaine structure, a Nouvelle Aquitaine structure, but we are all working together. Given the summer we just experienced, we started looking at adapting to climate change in a different way. I remember back in 2017, we were all very saddened by what happened in Portugal. I come from a village with a very strong Portuguese community, so we were really saddened by what happened in 2017 in Portugal. But this summer, we lost hectares and hectares to the fire, things that unfortunately also happened in your countries and your regions, and this was really very sad. But this led us to a discussion. So once the fire is out, how are we going to reforest? We have some partnership with professionals, but also scientific institutions such as INRA, CRPF. And we are looking at the different options to reforest these areas while taking into account climate change, even though we don't really know how much water we will have. We'll probably have months during which rain will fall very hard and then very long dry months. And then regarding forest fires and controlling them, we would like to add more financial resources to aerial monitoring and controlling measures. Because, for example, in the Basque country and Navarre, we need planes to be able to fight fires. And then reforestation, it's important, it's interesting, but we do have an acidic soil, so aside from maritime pine, we may not be able to grow any type of tree, any other type of tree. But there may be other options. So everything that we can share with you, or that you can share with us, is welcome. I'm really happy that the COSE, or the different structures that are represented here today are working on this question, and that we can work together. And rest assured that the Nouvelle Aquitaine region also wants to play a role. We really preferred when Europe had the money, region could use it, but now there is the Parisian the government, national government said, you're the ones that are going to be in charge of fighting against fighters, against fire. It's making things a little bit complicated, and in France, actually, to be honest, we would much rather talk directly to the European Union.
Ha sugerido la posibilidad de que Europa financie medios de extinción de incendios.
So you put forward the idea that Europe should finance the different measures. Well, with my colleague in San Sebastian, we met for a meeting. We realized that the south of Europe, be it Spain, Portugal, France, or not, we would all be impacted by forest fires. And the resources to fight fires are based in France, at least around the Mediterranean Sea, more than in our region. So our proposal is to ask for Europe to invest in aircraft fleet or air fleet. Because if you look at the different weather reports, we know that droughts do not happen at the same time everywhere. So we do know temperatures are going to rise. So the fire risk is going to increase, and if this risk is much more important, then we need the proper measures to fight against fires. And the most efficient way to put a fire out is to try and fight it in the first hours after it started. So maybe an aircraft fleet would be interesting, and Europe has the means to fund that. Okay, so let me start by thanking you. We do take part in many events, and we agree on the different objectives that have been listed. That being said, the European legislation does have an impact, and I think we have a problem here, because we're not addressing this problem the right way. And I do agree with you, Marco. There has been a lot of very positive comments being shared. We're talking about maybe a shift in paradigm. But one very important element is the complete complete lack of contact between the urban and rural areas. I'm working in a ministry that is very broad, that includes fisheries, agriculture, and forestry. So it's quite an interesting ministry where we can look at how we can align economic, social, and environmental policies. We are living in a time where about anything that a man can do is seen as a terrorist attack on the environment. Fisheries, that's not good. Any type of economic activities are bad for the environment. So we're always on the defensive. We always have to apologize, to justify any action. So if Europe wants to address the challenges for the future, we'll need agricultural products, we'll need wood. Otherwise, we will lose our footing on the world stage. We would have the Russian, the Chinese on the one hand, the US on the other hand, the African continent will also have its own position. And what will we do? Would we need to import everything maize from Canada because we don't have enough maize or corn? We do have access to a lot of knowledge, structure. We can innovate, and yet we are always apologizing, and that's not possible. One of our main problems is that there is an opposition between environment and forest, yet all of our objectives are the same if we want to cut our carbon emissions. If we want new materials which could replace oil, then we'll need to work together. Forest management is one solution. These are solutions to address the environmental challenges that we are faced with. I have the feeling that we always have to apologize for everything and anything that we do, and I think that's a mindset that we need to change, and we also need to change the framework, the link between forests and economic stakeholder. We have to be able to address the challenges, our future challenges, and if we don't stop acting the way we do, we won't be able to address them. So we do need to work together to overcome barriers. So we've seen that the European Union only recommends, but then it becomes a directive. So we're just kind of looking, they are just testing the water, and then suddenly they completely plunge in the water. So we are kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and this is not possible. We can't work like that. We need to work together. The political stakeholders as well should work together with the private stakeholders, rural areas with urban areas, everyone together. Otherwise, we won't be able to find proper solutions. So I'm looking at Marco, but it's not because he has a more environmentally friendly strategy that it's all great. We'll have a law at the European Parliament, and that comes with something else. For example, suddenly a regulation, if you do a clear cutting above 1,000 hectares, then you will have to ask for an authorization. That's not possible, but the Parliament is sovereign, so what can we do? Because the urban society is guiding our policies. Who is going to oppose the positions that they take? They are the one, urban people are deciding on our requirements. The Parliament is agreeing to it. The societies are becoming much more urban, much more connected, but also much more separated from the rural areas. And if we lose all these connections, then everyone will lose everything. We won't have a footing on the world stage. And I think it's important to work together with the Commission, with the different countries, with the regions, and it's only that way that we can work and achieve an economy that is sound, that works, that thrives, without getting that feeling that we are all sinners. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I think though the forest is very resilient, so in about 50 years, I believe, the foresters will be right, but we have to wait 50 years. We have a ministry called the Ministry for Ecological Transition. We have a Secretary of State, Secretary of the Environment. We have Secretary of Demographics and Secretary of Agriculture, which has a ministry for rural development in agriculture. We have some demographic challenges. We have and the energy with ecological transitions. What about the forest? Where are the forests? No, they are not in the environment, they're not in energy, they're not in the industry. And I think that Brussels has a forestry policy that is not an economic policy. There is also the economic forestry policy, and we should keep this in mind. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague. First of all, I would like to thank you for your initiative. And all the participants in this. I have to apologize for my Spanish, which is not very good. I hope I can continue for the European regions and the North. The North follows the European strategies. Regarding the orientations for internal policy and regional policy, following the orientations of the European policy, we cannot have a specificity. In 2017, there was a fire that was very significant and massive fire, and based on this, multiple studies and strategies and policies were devised. So, there was a new paradigm and collaborative, multifunctions, and I'd like to share what happened after the fires and strategy, public policy, a system for the integrated services. So I'm translating from Portuguese. It's not my native language. I'm doing my best. Je comprends le portugais, mais it's a logic for planification, for participative planification through the national intervention, regional intervention, and also the location. At the moment, we are before presiding the Northern Region Commission with the groups of 40 representatives at the national level, where we have the 3 pillars of the forestry policy, the civil protection, the policy. Also, we have the intervention of the local communities, the associations of producers for districts and forestries, as well as the local farmers, and also for the protection of the electrical infrastructures. What really matters is that society is aware of the problems of the fires After the achievement of the specific plan, we have reached 50 associations for a value of 1 million euros. The question is, where do we find them? Without, if we do not identify the problems, what can be done? And we have to identify them and implement directives. I think that this topic has various geographical aspects to address the planning and management of the territory and the transformation of the landscape. It takes a lot more time from a structural point of view, because indeed all along the day we've spoken about forest without management. Yeah, it's kind of difficult for me to translate because she's speaking Portuguese. I'm doing my best. I apologize because Portuguese is my fourth language. And how can we invest in forestry management, the multifunctional aspects, to the various means to fight against fire, and also changing those practices to achieve a good balance. And the civil protection is really helping us in this regard. And this is a problem of structural nature. And this is obviously up to the public authorities. Due to climate change, the problems have been increasing. And I think that there are solutions, and we are doing our best for the rural world to be effective. And the climate change has various aspects, and it also involves social changes, and the energy crisis creates more problems, and that will obviously have an impact on the solutions for the forestry sector. So there are new challenges induced by climate change, and we cannot ignore them. And of course, this also involves the demographic issues, and we have to devise solutions. And we have to face many challenges to manage the areas, and we have to work with more common participation between the rural and the urban world. And I think that public policies are changing, and they are opting for positive development, but we're not sure about the perspectives and about the outcomes. I think we have to reinforce the public policies, and we need to have consistent public policies, and we run the risk of finding regional solutions to a problem that is actually global, from the Basque country to yeah, it's important. we've got a strategy, we've got a forestry strategy, and it's important to follow our roadmap. And I think we all have to act together to devise our roadmap. I know it may sound a bit romantic as a position, but this is the position that I've been advocating. We have to quickly reinforce our network, and it's fundamental to have the support from the forestry authorities so that both public and private sectors get together and the various regions involved so that together they can exchange solutions and good practices. Thank you. Brigada.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Se ha mencionado la multifuncionalidad, que nunca sabemos si es una fortaleza o es una debilidad.
Is it a strength or a weakness?
Tu español es mucho mejor que mi portugués. Le cedo la palabra.
But your Spanish is much better than my Portuguese. Enrique? Thank you, Inés. I would like to tell you that after listening to my colleagues, I fully agree with what Victor said. The Basque advisor, the Basques are very smart and they're more clever than others, but they're all in the same ministry. And if we pool all the sectors in the same ministry, I think that is something which is very significant. And it's better than just going to ministry. It's better to have a ministry that understands all this instead of having a ministry that has no clue about society and forestry. But in Galicia, the forestry issue is perceived as a fully fledged economy. And I'm from the rural world, and I'm talking on behalf of the rural world and the forestry sector. 78% of our sector in Galicia is rural. To avoid problems, I've always said that I am a fully convinced European citizen. But what should we do if Europe is not taking everybody into account? Because we can't leave anybody behind. So this year, the forestry systems have undergone real problems and real disasters. 40% of the surface area in Galicia is in the Natura network. In Galicia, we have 48% of them, in the natural network. And the various tasks that we eventually gave up actually deal with renaturalization process. Mr. President of the Commission, if we choose to be resilient, maybe we should not renaturalize, but I think we should improve the management. We should update things and be more active and sustainable. I am one of these people who clearly think that societies have several environmental driving factors as well as social and economic factors. But if we only focus on the environment and leave the social and the economic aspects behind, we will lose durability, and durability will slip through the net. So we clearly think that, as far as Galicia is concerned, the future of our territory depends on good management. If there's no good management, things just stop. And if it's the case, then the fires start breaking out. And it goes against what we are required to do.
Un inicio de algo que después nos va a venir impuesto de Europa, tenemos que oponernos rotundamente a esta estrategia.
And if it is then imposed to us by Europe, then we'll have to change our strategy, because we have to be aware that we advocate biodiversity, because you defend the forest, like all forestry owners. The forest is a source of research and diversity. So when you say multi-function, you're also talking about the economy of the territory, and Galicia favors active forestry management. So we have a plan for 20 years, and so we need to provide assistance to the owners. 99% of the surface areas in forests are actually private in Galicia. So we have to help the foresters. We need professional and active foresters that can benefit from the biggest assistance and good assistance from the... Please, I don't want to be misunderstood. If I have to provide ecosystemic services, that means I will lose the battle for the forestry sector, because there are so many mechanisms at stake. There are means through the tax system in order to help the forestry business. For those who work in Galicia, and for us, we work with the Spanish government to obtain tax benefits so that the forestry sector can survive and live on and remain profitable. They work also in diversification, because if there is no primitive forest in a territory, if there's no primary forest, and if we have very old forest owners, and if we cannot have any territory managers, and if this is left behind, well, what can we do? I think we have to get together to provide assistance to this territory. Okay. Of course, we work for diversification, and we want to have more trees. At the moment, we have a recovery plan for the chestnut tree forest and for the plantation of chestnut trees. And for this purpose, we've used significant funds in Galicia. We've had pine trees, eucalyptus. We have trees that have a true economic profitability. Of course, that's interesting. But you have to remember that forestry management is key. And when we say forester, we also mean farming. We're talking about the social aspects of durability, because I'm talking about the breeders of Galicia also. So it's important that we can manage the territory as a whole. If we renaturalize everything, but if there's no management, the territory will be left behind, and it will end up with major risk, hazard, and fires. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's true. We forgot one aspect. The forest of the forest sector, which is the grazing and the pasture management. So for Brussels, as far as Brussels is concerned, we receive a lot of money, and then you have to distribute the money in the best way you can, in the best possible manner. And I'm going to hand over to Pablo from Navarre. He is the
Bueno,
head of
buenas
the
tardes.
environment
Lo primero, agradecer a
sector.
USE, por supuesto, la
So
invitación.
first, I'd like to thank you
Especialmente
for your
a
invitation
su preocupación,
and
su organización, su desvelo. Sabemos
and
lo que supone
your
organizar un evento de este
participation
tipo y
and the
muchas
time
gracias. Recuperaros y
you
descansar el fin de semana.
in the organization. Thank you very much,
Suscribo
and have a
gran
good
parte de
weekend.
lo que se ha expuesto
My name,
anteriormente,
I agree partially with
en
what
cuanto
you
a la
said.
necesidad de una gestión forestal
Regarding the
territorio,
needs for active
integradora,
forestry management
que afecte
on an
tanto
integrated
a
territory,
masas,
well,
forestales
this
de
obviously
repoblación o
affects
artificiales
the
como naturales,
woods
afecta
and
propiedades privadas,
the
afecta
artificial
propiedades públicas.
replantation of trees as
Pero
well as
quería
private
empezar,
and
haciendo una
public
reflexión
properties. But
sobre
first, I'd like to start
lo que es
by
la Navarra forestal.
introducing
Entonces,
a
José Villarreal
request
ha expuesto
on
con datos, ¿no?, de cuál es la realidad de nuestra comunidad,
on the
que
lives
es realmente diferente a la del resto de
foresters.
comunidades que estamos aquí representadas.
It's
El
very
peso
different.
de los montes de propiedad pública es notorio. La presencia
The
de
weight of the public
bosques
forest
naturales o bosques,
is quite
autóctonos,
limited.
como queramos llamarles, también es notoria. Son
The
realidades
indigenous
diferentes.
forest
Realidades diferentes también llevan
only
a reflexiones diferentes.
account for a small part,
Y a consecuencias
and it's
diferentes
different
también podrías
reality.
poner.
And
Compartiendo el
obviously
relato
there
de
are
anteriormente también,
different
que no se me
consequences
entienda
that I
que
will
con lo que voy a
explain to you
decir a partir
later.
de ahora me meto en la jaula del león y lo acompaño a Marco.
From now on,
No es exactamente eso. Pero, desde luego,
That's not exactly what I was
plantear esta
saying.
situación en parámetros de perdedores y ganadores,
so I'm going
de
to
batallas y guerras,
show you
no me
this.
parece que nos lleve a ningún
I'm
sitio.
going to present the point of
Yo
view
creo
of the
que tenemos que
breeders,
intentar integrar, la
but
gestión
it's not
forestal,
leading
los
to anything.
apartamentos
We're trying to
forestales,
integrate forestry
manera,
management
con todo lo que tiene que ver con la conservación
for
de
the
la
wood
biodiversidad
sector
y de los paisajes. Y
with
explico también un poco
everything
hablando
that
de
relates to
estructura.
biodiversity.
He hecho la
And I
mención
will
clara
talk
y
about the
rotunda
structure
cuando
also.
Inés me ha presentado como director general de Desarrollo Rural,
I
soy
clearly
director general de Medio Ambiente.
said,
Y
when
dentro de esta
Inés
dirección
introduced me,
general,
I
dos servicios,
said I'm the
el
head of the
servicio de
environment
biodiversidad,
sector,
el
that we
servicio
have
forestal.
two departments. We have one
Ambos
department for
servicios,
biodiversity and we
los
have
directores
one
que
department
llevan
for
esos
forestry. And the
servicios
two
son ingenieros
departments
forestales, los dos.
are chaired by two engineers who are actually foresters, and
Las
they get along
políticas
very well.
compartimos,
And
yo
the-
general también. Yo también soy ingeniero de montes, por cierto.
And we share common policies together.
En Navarra, cuestiones que he oído
In
esta
Navarra,
mañana y que me han llamado la atención, como el tema de las
I heard
cortas a
something
rasa,
about Navarra this morning,
como si eso
about the
supusiera dentro del debate social,
clear cutting.
político, ¿no? Un conflicto.
and there was
Navarra,
a
las
social
cortas
and
ha
political
hecho
debate.
de pinares de
In
pino
Navarra,
ansis que han tenido enfermedades en los últimos años,
Pine trees
que han
cutting
afectado a más de 8.000
and
hectáreas.
oak trees
Y
cutting
Juanmi,
have affected more than
ustedes
8,000
en su
hectares in
conjunto conocen de lo que
total.
estoy hablando, ¿verdad? Y no tenemos esa presión social,
forests
no tenemos
together-
esa discusión por parte ni siquiera de los grupos ecologistas.
I mean,
Está
for all the
integrada.
forests, there hasn't been any
Ese tipo de
social
tratamiento
pressure.
de
We
las
haven't had any
sociedades.
pre-discussion with the
No
green
solo eso,
activists.
hablando también de bosques primigenios, bosques primarios, como se quiera llamar. En Navarra tenemos
And this also
cientos de
includes
hectáreas
primary
de bosques
forest.
primarios.
In Navarra, we have hundreds of
Dentro de
hectares
las
of
redes
primary
más protegidos
forests
de Navarra hay reservas integrales,
and the
bosques
network
biosavetales,
and the Natura
propiedades de
network.
pino, que
We
están
have black
fuera de
pine
todo tipo
trees.
de silvicultura y se indemniza a los propietarios. El gobierno de
And
Navarra,
they
pérdida de
are
renta
not
de
involved
ese tipo
in
de superficies,
forestry
abonan una
activities.
cantidad. Y tenemos en ese sentido también,
And they get quite a lot of revenues.
no solo eso, también en cualquier proyecto de planificación o ordenación forestal, tener en cuenta también que esos datos
And any
expuestos anteriormente, Navarra,
planning project
antes del
for the
60%
forestry,
la
well,
superficie forestal está ordenada,
the Navarra,
planificada, está certificada.
on top of its 70% developed surface area, we
en este caso,
have
un 5% al menos un 5% debe
added
permanecer la evolución natural sin intervención, sin silvicultura. Y eso no nos genera problemas.
So 5% have to be in a natural area.
5%, entre comillas,
Sorry, it's a bit
viaje
broken.
hacia la naturalidad y no nos genera conflicto.
And we do agree with those different measures. So in forests that are over 20 years old, we've been working on biodiversity, environment. Since the beginning of the 21st century, we've been integrating all these dimensions. Of course, dead wood is important to preserve species, so that is why in some places we let dead wood on the ground. 20 years ago that was a problem, but now it's no longer an issue. People understand that leaving some dead wood on the ground is important to protect animal species. There are some forests where we only have one species of tree, and it does not really generate any issues. So the idea is to integrate, share, and convince. It's not about losing or winning. If our forest strategy has to rely on biodiversity strategy, whether we like it or not, this is something that we have to keep in mind, and then we can maybe change the content of some strategies. In some regions, we've influenced, or at least we did some advocacy work to influence the policy. And forest management can bring some revenue, of course, to forest owners, and it's not necessarily incompatible with biodiversity and preserving biodiversity. So maybe I can stop there. We can talk about forest fires. No? Okay, so let me stop there. I still have 1 minute. Okay. So on forest fires. This year in Navarre, we've had a lot of major forest fires. And we're also going to move away from the notion of forest fires. We'll be talking about rural areas fires as well, because of course coniferous trees were burnt, but also some crops and some houses. So we do need to change a little bit our paradigm. Fires are not just an issue for forests, but for the entire rural areas as well. And we need to protect people. We need to protect villages. What we experienced this year is not going to be a unique event, so we have to be prepared to face more of such occurrences. We need to be able to protect villages, people, rural areas. We do need an active forest management. A lot of pine trees were burned that had been planted not so long ago, so that's why we have to be very active. Now, there are some very strong wind, some very dry and hot weather, so that's why we need a mix and match approach when it comes to planting trees. And on the 3 billion of trees that have to be planted, okay, that's great. We should plant so many trees in urban areas as well, in agroforestry. But we must be cautious. We need to create a heterogeneous landscape with diverse activities and diverse species. And that's it for me.
No quiero yo que penséis que en Galicia queremos hacer matarrasa de todo lo que hay de bosques.
I don't want you to think that in Galicia we want to get rid of all the different species that we have. We have chestnut trees in some part of our territories. Even if they are not primary forests, we do have to manage them properly. You're talking about 30% of the area, 10% is protected. So I'm no expert. But if we are to cut 150 million of cubic meter in Europe, and at the same time we're saying that we need to use wood for building, for the building industry, and to heat our homes, so where are we going to find all this wood? Probably in primary forests. So I think that's an issue. If we can't, if we are going to have some crop issue, some gas issue in the future, but also some wood issue apparently. So I think this is quite a complex and heated discussion. I think that the European Union and the European Commission cannot come up with a plan that is okay for everyone, because Galicia, for example, has nothing to do with Navarre. There are local specificities, as we've already said, for the weather conditions. You said that Navarre is a place where people have the same living conditions as in the Netherlands, and it's not the case in Galicia. So we should keep this economic aspect in mind as well. This is what we are asking for. We can't have one-size-fits-all strategies, because 30% of our territory, when you say 30% of the territory, it cannot be broken down by the Commission. Thank you. Of course, I respect everything that has been said, but I just wanted to give you a few numbers. 10% is not just 10% of forest being protected. It's 10% of all territories being protected. So it's not 10% of all forests. Second thing, you're saying that there are no economic aspects to the biodiversity strategy. I just want to give you one number. In the restoration strategy, €1 spent on restoration comes up to €8 in revenue in ecosystems. So €1 spent generates €8 in revenue. That is a very conservative choice. We've had some economic studies saying that €1 spent generates €36 in revenue. So I stop there because we don't have the time. But I just want to say that I do not think that it's fair to say that there is a gap between biodiversity and economy. I don't agree with that. Biodiversity is a very important source of value generation, and it's important for the economy. Okay. We don't agree on everything, but we do agree on a lot of things. Politicians that are present here wanted to share a statement for Brussels and national authorities. So it's a 2-page long statement with a few points, taking into account all the different aspects that we mentioned today, and based on that, they've decided to come up with the following statement that I will be reading out to you, or I will try to read it out.
Bien. Nuestros responsables y representantes políticos, conscientes de los retos a los que se enfrentan los bosques del sur de Europa, las autoridades regionales con competencia en materia forestal de Galicia,
politicians that
Navarre,
are
Nouvelle,
aware of
País
the
Vasco y
challenges
Portugal,
to which
junto con
the
las
forests of the
organizaciones de
south
propietarios
of Europe are
forestales
faced
y las
with, the
organizaciones
different
científicas y
authorities
profesionales
from Galicia,
reunidas en Moderator,
Navarre,
manifestamos
Basque
nuestro
Country,
firme
France,
compromiso de
Portugal,
trabajar por el
and
aumento de la
all of these
resiliencia de
organizations
nuestros
met
bosques
together in
y
Bordeaux
por
and
fortalecer
are
las
committed to
respectivas
working for the
cadenas
resilience
forestales
of
y
our
ganaderas.
forests
Y en
and to
ese sentido
strengthen
declaramos,
the
es necesario que los
value
bosques y la
chain
gestión
in forestry
forestal
and wood. And in
sostenible
that sense, we
ocupen
state that
un
it's
lugar central y destacado, no solo en
that
estas
sustainable
estrategias
management of
nacionales y
forestry
regionales,
of forests
sino también
has
en
to
las
play an
iniciativas que se
important
están
role not only in
desarrollando
national and
en la
regional
Comisión Europea,
strategies but also in
a
all
fin de
initiatives
seguir contando
that are
con los bosques
developed
como
and launched by
proveedores
the
de
European
múltiples
Commission in order
servicios
to be
como el
able
secuestro
to
de las emisiones de carbono.
enjoy
La
forests
sustitución
which
de los
provide
combustibles fósiles
diverse services
y el
such as
fomento
carbon
de la
capture,
biodiversidad,
replacing
entre
fossil
otros
fuel
beneficios.
materials,
Dos, para contribuir al relevo
and
generacional
supporting
en el manejo de
biodiversity,
los bosques y poder continuar
among
con la
other benefits.
movilización de la madera, creemos indispensable promover la creación de
In order
agrupaciones de
to be able
propietarios
to use wood, we think that creating a grouping of forest owners is important. We need that it is urgent that all efforts in order to creating those instruments have to be deployed and taken. It's important to bring people together, given the fact that forests are left alone and that forest owners are losing skills and do not always have the proper knowledge of the different activities that they should do with their forests. It's important to increase partnership between public-private partnerships, increasing and communicating around the research and development resources in order to improve the resilience of forests in the south of Europe, including the prevention, health control, and the access to tools to monitor forest behavior in the face of climate change. Fourth, the presence of trans-regional infrastructures where forest stakeholders could share knowledge should be supported and boosted in order to gain very important progress in the forestry industry and all economic industry that are involved. Public assistance and subventions and current demands of the society are very important tools to improve our forest management and to reduce risk and threats posed to our forests. This is the statement that our politicians made today on the 29th of September 2022.
País Vasco, Portugal, norte de Portugal y Navarre.
So with our regional advisors from Galicia, Nouvelle, Aquitaine, Navarre, Portugal, Spain.